Hello there. Today on Board Games, Bricks, and Hobbies, we are taking a look at 5 IP-related games that I think are worth checking out. So, what's an IP? Well, it's an intellectual property, so think a massive franchise like Marvel, or even a more obscure series like Animorphs that got one season. Yes, I know it's a book series, and the book series is amazing. Definitely check it out. The TV show, not so much. But board games have come a long way from the initial games that were licensed out, like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie game, which I played as a child, and it's absolutely as terrible as it sounds. So games have come a long way since then, and there are actually a lot of really good intellectual property-based games these days. One company in particular that's pretty good at this is Prospero Hall. They design a lot of interesting games. And for myself, I'm not a huge fan of any particular fan base. I'm not a Star Wars or Star Trek person. I don't really get into that fight. But I can enjoy a game on its own. And so these are 5 games that I do own and do enjoy that just happen to be based off of intellectual properties. So we're going to take this list from the smallest game to the largest. So first up, we have a small card game called Game of Thrones Hand of the King. This is an interesting little set collection game where you are trying to collect different members of each house to have the most at the end of the game. There's a lot of backstabbing and trickery, which one would expect from the theme, which I haven't seen, but I still enjoy this game. It's got cartoon artwork that's original, so more kid-friendly than the show, but it does have some cartoon blood and things like that. I would definitely recommend checking this one out if you like tense, short card games that are fun. Next up, we have Home Alone. It's just called Home Alone Game, but this is the most recent version. There are other Home Alone board games that are kind of more of that cheap cash grab area, but this one is a 2-player asymmetrical game where one player plays as the bandits and the second player plays as the Kevin. One player plays as the bandits and the other player plays as Kevin. Kevin is obviously trying to stop the bandits from terrorizing his house, and the bandits are trying to go in and steal loot. So it's asymmetrical. It says you can play it with 4 players, but it's definitely a 2-player game here. It's enjoyable, fun, has a little bit of tactics, and doesn't overstay its welcome. I would definitely recommend checking that one out. Next up, we have another game that I've talked about a couple times. This is Uno Ultimate. They made 2 different versions. There's a Marvel version, which had a couple sets, and also a DC version. It's a shame that they didn't branch out and make other things, because I think the Uno Ultimate format is pretty solid. It's different enough from the original Uno, but also still simple. And I was definitely expecting a cash grab on this one, but they changed enough and I enjoy it. You can play it with multiple players. Again, you can see my full review on that. I'm not going to repeat so much of that here, but I would definitely recommend checking out Uno Ultimate, even if you don't particularly care for superheroes. Next up, we have Fast and Furious Highway Heist. So this one really caught me off guard. I picked it up on a whim. It was on clearance. And full confession, I do enjoy some of the Fast and Furious movies. Are they totally ridiculous? Yes. Are there no physics? Yes. But I do think they're one of the few franchises that puts emphasis on non-familial relationships, and that's kind of cool. But again, opinions about the IP itself aside, Fast and Furious Highway Heist is a fun co-op game. I've never got around to doing a full review like I wanted, but it really surprised me to the point where I think it actually might be too complex, and I'm not really sure who the target demographic for this game was, because I don't think the average Fast and Furious viewer is gonna latch on to all the rules in the book. there's several pages of rules, and it's great that they clarify every edge case possible, pretty much, but it is kind of overwhelming. So, kind of an odd situation. It's a complex game. It has all original art, so no screen grabs, none of that cheap-looking stuff that you'd expect from a movie-based game. It's original art, and it looks good. It's functional, and a fun co-op game with multiple different scenarios and difficulty levels. There's a tank scenario, there's a semi-truck heist scenario, and there's a blow up the helicopter scenario. And it's all ridiculous, just like the movie. Physics don't exist. Maybe they'll add that in an expansion, I wonder. But you're driving your cars down the road, taking action points, and again, it's cooperative and really fun, but I just wonder who was the target demographic for this? It's too complex for, like, I feel like someone who likes Fast and Furious that picks this up would just take one look at the rule book and just be like, and then donate it to a thrift store. So kind of confusing that they took the effort to design a really good game for a franchise that's not known for being particularly witty and intelligent and more just silly kind of Mission Impossible style action. But again, I still think it's a great game, regardless of the IP. It's a fun car game. As someone who also enjoys die-cast cars like Hot Wheels, I had a blast with it, even if some of the scenarios are pretty difficult. So I would definitely recommend checking that one out as well. And last but not least, we have the largest, arguably most complex game on this list, and that is Bioshock Infinite Siege of Columbia. Wow. What is with these games and long titles? I guess they have to differentiate it from the video game, so they add a subtitle, and it's just... Anyway. Bioshock Infinite Siege of Columbia is a two-player kind of war/combat game. So think Risk, but more strategy. It's a bit more complex than Risk, and it also has a lot less luck than Risk. You're still rolling dice for combat. However, you have cards, and the key for this game is in the cards. The cards are multi-use. You can either use them for money, you can use them for attacks, or you can use them to gain influence in votes. And I really like the multi-use cards in this game. It's really the core of the game that revolves around that. And you're balancing whether or not you want to upgrade certain abilities. You can upgrade them, each of the 3 values, and there's a lot of strategy behind the cards. But the game itself is also good. You're fighting each other over territories, again, kind of Risk style, but it feels significantly different from your typical Risk game. So if you don't like Risk, don't let that steer you out. And I just think it's a really well done production. Again, it's original art. It's not just screen grabs from the video game. There's a NPC in the form of Booker and Elizabeth, who are actually the main characters in the game that you play. But in this game, you're playing as the Vox versus the Founders. And so Elizabeth and Booker just kind of run amok and ruin everything for both players. Now, the game can be a bit swingy because of this, but I enjoy that. And it's interesting to get frustrated at a game, not in a bad way, but whereas usually people in take that kind of games, you get frustrated at the opponent. But in this game, it's the game that's being a bit of a prick. So I really enjoy Bioshock Infinite Siege of Columbia. I definitely recommend checking that one out if you want a solid 2-player combat game. It's another one that technically can be played with 4, but I would not recommend it. This is definitely a 2-player game at heart. So those are 5 IP games that I think are great and worth owning if you like the sound of them, even if you don't particularly care for the IP. I myself, like I said, I only just played Bioshock Infinite. It was okay. It was fine. Fast and Furious, I think 5 through 8 is a sweet spot. They're not too ridiculous, but they're also not just cars and random stuff. And Marvel and DC, they're fine. Again, I'm mostly lukewarm on these properties, but I really enjoy these games and I own them. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I hope to see you in another Board Games, Bricks, and Hobbies video.